Hi and welcome to Matt's Chitchats, where I talk to all sorts of different people about all sorts of different things relating to languages. My name's Matt Absalom and I'm an Italianist who's always ready for a good chit-chat. In this episode, I'm joined by Vera Gheno, the noted Italian sociolinguist, public intellectual and prolific writer. Vera is particularly known for her work on language and gender, but today we're talking about Italian music. I started by asking Vera what aspects of contemporary Italian music were of particular interest to her.
Well, first of all, I have to say that normally I'm not that much into Italian music. I mean, most of my colleagues or friends really love Italian music from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, from Lucio Battisti to De André, the politically relevant music as well. And probably because my parents forced me to listen to that kind of music when I was a kid, I just can't really stand it. So I went through a long period of hate for Italian music. When I was a teenager, I only listened to English spoken, sung music. And I came back to Italian music recently, mostly because my daughter, who is now almost 17, is into contemporary Italian music. So through her, I came back to Italian music. And what I really like about the youngest generation of singers or composers is that they mix a lot of different languages, not only Italian and English, but also a lot of other less expected languages, for example, Arabic, because that's one of the languages of the new generation of immigrants to Italy, or second generations that came earlier from other countries. And for example, there are singers or trappers or rappers like Mahmood and Ghali, who normally use pieces of Arabic in their Italian flow. And that's kind of fascinating and interesting for me. And apart from that, of course, there is always the mixture between classical Italian, formal, grammatically correct Italian, and the so-called juvenile languages, which we know, because it happens also in English, play a lot with grammar and the limits of grammar. So that's also something I really like to explore. I like those areas of language where the grammar is stretched over its limit.
What about the place of Italian dialects? For instance, I'm thinking of Geolier in the recent Sanremo. I think I read an article where someone was basically saying that was the song that should have won, or something along those lines.
Well, you're talking about Naples and the area of Naples, which has been always very well known for one specific type of music, which is the so-called neomelodico napoletano. And that has a very long tradition. I think the new instance is that this music spilled over the limits of Naples and the surrounding areas, and especially with Geolier, became known in the whole of Italy. But there is a lot of Neapolitan there. It's not so common, though, that other area languages are represented that much in music. I mean, I live in Florence, in Tuscany, and certainly there are some singers who sing in Tuscan, but they are local. They didn't become national phenomena or even international in some cases, like Geolier now.
I think it's quite interesting that Arabic is a language that's appearing in this sort of context. And what I'm wondering is, what do you think of the notion that sometimes the arts, like music, foreshadow future societal changes? So, you're getting this a bit more openness to multilingualism, if you like, on the music scene. Does it foreshadow a future openness?
Good question. I mean, I would love it to be that way. I remember that many, many years ago, 20-something years ago, when I was studying juvenile languages, one of the remarks I made was exactly that when we look to juvenile languages, we can have an idea of where could our languages go in the future. And also this is, you can have the same feeling for me when you watch or listen to this kind of music. And of course, the new generations grow up in their present, which is very different from the one I grew up in. I mean, I'm almost 50, so there is quite of an age gap now. If I look at the normality of my daughter, she grew up with people from literally every continent and people with disabilities as well, or neuro diversity in her class. So she has always been very much used to the so-called diversity. I think for the younger generations, that's quite the normal situation. And what Ghali or Da Supreme or Mahmood sing about is their contemporary, their reality, which would be lovely if it became the new normality for me. Of course, from my point of view, as I am suffering of a Peter Pan syndrome, I just refuse to be an adult. For me, the main problem we have in Italy right now is us, a mature generation who just don't want to cope with the natural diversity occurring in society. And so what is very funny for me is that these songs are very much popular, are very much listened. But there is the whole group of more mature critics who refuse to acknowledge that this is beautiful music. They say that this is trash, that it is destroying Italian language and blah, blah. It's always the same kind of very critical point of view because it seems to challenge the norm of Italian, even with mixing the languages, which is, seldom looked at as something positive.
I find all of these discussions and sort of arguments quite interesting if we actually look at, the very short history of Italian linguistic unity, because as we know, the country unified in, 1816, 1870. And it really wasn't until sort of universal schooling, the wars, internal migration, that standard Italian became the standard. Before that, surely the country was used to a level of at least a diglossic sort of situation where people would, use their local variety at home. And then if they had an interface with the public, then they'd be trying to use the standard Italian. So why do you think with that background it's so difficult in some ways to come to terms with a multilingual reality?
Well, I would add to your remarks that Italian is the last language that became the language of culture, because for a long period people talk their local, let's call it dialect, but it's an area language. And then usually they spoke another language, which was the language of the culture. So, for example, Alessandro Manzoni spoke French with his acolytes, his friends, not Italian. I mean, he wrote the Promessi Sposi in Italian, but the language of culture was French, and it was French for a long time. So you can find French bits and pieces in many area languages of Italy. For example, in the southern city of Bari, in the local dialect, the name for cupboard is armoire, which is straight French. So this is also very fascinating. The Italian was the last to become the cultural language, a language of cultural relevance. Now, probably this is also the answer to your question. I mean, we became speakers of Italian with quite some difficulties. It took 100 years from the unity of Italy to become speakers of Italian. So and the TV had a very important role in this. 1961, 62 is when the Italian TV entered in the living rooms of of really Italians, every Italian. And so probably there are entire generations that still have the feeling that they do not have a very strong grasp of Italian. And so they are very protective about their language. And when you are uncertain of your relationship with something or somebody, you tend to be, more protective, even more hyper-protective.
Yeah.
I mean, and another thing which is very important to underline for me is that entire generations, for example, my generation, is not so acquainted to other languages. I mean, in my age bracket, people who speak fluently English are not that common. Even in my field of expertise, I mean, as a linguist.
Yeah.
But, a linguist is not somebody who knows many languages, even if some believe that. No, I remember one of the opening lines of one of my favorite movie, which is Arrival.
Yes.
And there is the first dialogue between this guy from the military and the linguist, Louise.
Yeah.
And the guy from the military says, "Oh, you are a linguist, so you speak many languages," which is kind of a nonsense because one can be a linguist and only know one language.
Absolutely.
And many Italianists do not know any other language. And I think, well, that's kind of a limit sometimes because I think you have to see a bigger picture, especially when you study international phenomena like juvenile languages or the language of music.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the television. I've always had this hypothesis that, the countries that have dubbed television, so, Italy, France, does Spain have dubbed television?
I don't know. Maybe yes, because they have the Real Academia Española, so maybe they have a little bit of.
So let's say Southern Western Europe, compared to Northern Europe, where they don't have dubbed television, and there's a clear demarcation in English competency. And I think this is interesting because clearly the television, like in Italy, television had a pivotal role with the spread of Italian. And there were even those famous programs teaching Italian on the television. Do you think removing dubbing would have a similar effect in Italy now that it's clearly the same sort of effect that it's had in Northern?
Well, I don't have empirical data here at hand, but I think it's already happening with the on-demand TV.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where you can choose.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And again, I'm sorry to quote my daughter that often, but she is very interestingly studying Korean by herself.
Okay.
And one of the ways she had to grow closer to Korean is to watch a lot of Korean dramas, Korean TV series. And of course, she watches them with English subtitles. And she picks up a lot by listening to those TV series and programs. So, yes, I think that the question of dubbing is central in the perception that many Italians have of English as something that is still very, very distant from their everyday life. Whereas I lived 3 years in Finland when I was a kid, from 10 to 13. Okay. And I went to school there, so I picked up also Finnish. I already spoke Hungarian, so it has some similarities.
Sure.
The system base, not really as a language. But I remember that we watched a lot of TV series in English with Finnish subtitles. And that was very important, I think, for not only for my knowledge of English, but also like feeling English as part of my life, as something that is just organic with my everyday life. If you only watch dubbed TV, you don't have, I think, that familiarity effect. And also it's very interesting that the dubbed Italian is very artificial. It's not a real Italian. Nobody speaks like that in Italy. And also many straight translations from English have become part of our everyday Italian language, even if they are not technically Italian. For example, you can't say the F word here, but the Italian correspondent of the F word is not something that we would ever use. Can I make an example? You can cut it out.
Of course.
Apri quella fottuta porta.
Yeah. Sure.
Open that effing door.
Yeah.
It's just something that is not Italian. We would say apri quella cazzo di porta.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm sorry, this is a little bit
that's
explicit.
a great example.
but the fact that the F word is not part of an Italian standard upbringing, and it's something that it came through the dubbing. It's very interesting for me. There are studies on the language of dubbing, which are quite fascinating because it's a new form of Italian which is non-existent.
Another sub-variety.
Yes, exactly. Constructed.
Absolutely, yeah. Going back to where we started with music, I often look at the Italian top 10. I look at the songs that are in the top 10, and I'm always really interested to see the number of English language songs in the top 10. Typically, it's either a 50-50 split or there's maybe a couple more Italian songs, but the presence of English is very pervasive in pop music or top 40 music. Do you think that exposure to English helps people, like the generation you were talking about, your generation, they would hear English language songs. In fact, when I'm in Italy, I always hear English language songs that I haven't heard for 100 years when I'm in Italy on the radio.
Because you're nostalgic.
Very nostalgic. But do you think there's any effect from that sort of exposure on people's relationship with English?
Yes, but I think mine is not the first generation. For example, my mother, who was born in 1949, and she was born in Hungary. She learned English first from the Beatles, and then later in her life from Bruce Springsteen. She's a big fan of Bruce Springsteen. We went to a concert as well.
Wow.
And this is how she learned English, because she never studied English at school. She studied Russian and then Italian, of course, but never English. So her knowledge of English, which is even now, she's in her 70s, it's quite basic, but it's an okay basic, and came entirely from pop and rock, especially rock in her case. I started to really appreciate English with my first purchases of cassettes, because that's my age. And I still remember that my first cassette that I purchased in the 80s was The Final Countdown by Europe.
Okay.
And so a Swedish group who sung in English. That was the first. And then I went to Madonna. I became a great fan of Madonna, and I translated all the lyrics. So for me, the music was essential to have a first grasp on English, aside from what I learned in school. We have a problem in Italy. Now you learn English even in middle school or elementary school, but most teachers are not native speakers, and not even decent speakers, I have to say. So many people even now will learn an English which is completely mispronounced, something like orange, example, instead of orange.
Sure.
And I think that the savior here becomes, again, the fact that you can listen to music in English. Movies and also music. Because if you have, something similar is happening also here, but my generation and our generation was into certain musical moods. So if you were a goth or you were, a listener to heavy metal or pop, but you had a genre, a musical genre, which was like one of your favorites. Nowadays, I see that younger generation listen to every kind of music. They can listen to trap one day and then to pop, and then they go from Taylor Swift to Grimes to whatever experimental music without missing a beat.
Yeah. Do you think that's because of the way we access music now? Because, if you've got your device, you've got this however 1,000 songs that you can just access.
Yeah, and also that the apps can create...
The algorithm.
Yeah, create a listening list for you, adding a lot of artists you maybe you didn't even know. for example, I got into the tunnel of K-pop through my daughter, and I also went to a concert a couple of weeks ago by Stray Kids in Milan. It was a great show, 67,000 people dancing in the mud because there was a downpour just before the concert, but it was great. And my algorithm picked that up on the app I use to listen to music, and now I'm full of every kind of K-pop artist I didn't even know about, which is kind of very, fascinating, because you can also rebuild the things you have listened to.
Absolutely.
And this is very different from how we listen to music back in the days.
Exactly. I often think about, you sort of had to commit to things because you'd have to buy like the whole album. So, or the cassette, whereas now you might just listen to one song by an artist. You don't have that same level of
commitment.
Yeah. I was trying to work out whether I felt bad about that or whether I liked it.
Back in the days?
No, now.
Well, now?
Yeah, whether I think it's a loss or a gain.
Well, it depends on how nostalgic you are.
Well, when I am nostalgic, of course, I've got everything at my fingertips anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter's in the music industry, and she talks a lot about how this sort of current model doesn't favour artists at all. That it's very hard for artists to earn money under this model. And so in some ways, it sort of makes me think of the sort of the ecology of the, are we going to just end up with AI generated?
I hope not.
No, I hope not too. But, I'm not sure the ramifications of the relationship that we have with music now have been fully played out.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier from a certain point of view to listen to a lot of very different music.
That's right.
But what you said here is very, very true, very important, that it's more and more difficult to earn from the music you make. So probably that can have also an impact on the quality of the music you make. I mean, how can you commit to making good music if you cannot have a return?
If you have to spend all of your time working so that you can, doing some other job so that you can. Yeah.
So basically, music artists became like us writers.
Absolutely.
I cannot live from the revenue of the books I write, and I have written 16 books, and they are all circulating. But still, I don't earn enough money to stop my day job.
No, absolutely. It's very interesting thinking about those creative industries and the situation, that we're in now with this interface with technology. And,
yes.
But, even talking about writing, and thinking about the physical book compared to electronic versions. We were talking in a meeting the other day that our library here at the university wants to move a lot of physical books off campus now into an archive. And one of my colleagues was saying, one of the things that we will lose is the serendipity of going to the shelf and getting the book that you want, but then looking either side of that book and going, I haven't seen this. This looks good. That our generation can appreciate that sort of activity, but I don't know if generations, the younger ones that have never done that or never had that, because, they've always accessed their readings online or they've always had them electronically. They're interesting questions to think about,
Yeah, I mean, there is one thing that we are losing right now. I think it's browsing, not only through books, but also through LPs.
Absolutely.
Or through CDs or through whatever, because even browsing through a vocabulary, because most things are direct access.
Absolutely,
no?
And you look up the word that you want in the dictionary and you don't stay there.
And you don't see all the words around it, by the way.
Which I love. One thing I love about word reference is if you do put a word in, over on the left-hand side, you see all the words near it. And because I'm a word sort of geeky type,
Yes.
I'll go, ooh, click. But,
And then you get lost.
And then I'm there for half an
Yeah.
hour looking at all these
I do
words.
the same. I do the same. But I noted now that I'm looking after a lot of people writing their BA thesis.
Yeah.
I have a 60 thesis right now in my hand. And one thing that my students are losing is the alphabetical order.
Wow.
Because they don't really need it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this in any kind of scolding way.
Yeah.
It's just
an
you
observation.
don't really, I mean, you don't really have to browse through anything that has an alphabetical order.
Oh.
Whereas we had, address books,
Absolutely.
the telephone book,
Yeah,
the yellow
definitely.
pages,
Yes, yeah.
and also the vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I discovered this by chance because when they put together the bibliography, the list of books, they never think about putting them in alphabetical order. It's not just normal for them.
Wow.
Whereas for me, it's just it's like a reflex.
Absolutely.
As soon as I have something to put together, I put it in alphabetical order because it's easier to find it.
Yes.
And now I have to teach this, which is very interesting for me.
It is interesting. Yeah.
So it was totally unrelated with music, but it came to mind because I remember the days when I went through LPs in the music shop.
Absolutely. That's right.
And they were in alphabetical orders, and I was
Yeah.
looking for, one artist after the other. And then you found a cover that was very interesting, like an art.
Absolutely.
And I have never listened to this LP. Okay, we got into that the Muppetish phase of the good old times. Let's get back to the present times. Maybe it's better.
We'll link back to our conversation about where we started with the multilingualism. And, you remember my question that I said, is it foreshadowing and openness? Mm-hmm. Can we just talk for a moment about Italy as a multilingual, multicultural country in the 21st century? In your view, how is Italy coping with this, this shifting identity, if you like?
Well, I think we have to go back to something that I already talked about a little bit, is the uncertainty towards their own roots, one's own roots. One thing that my professor, Tullio De Mauro, always said is that we're like trees, so our roots have to be deep enough to grow a stable trunk, and then to open the branches, to other languages. But if you're missing the root part, you'll never have a good quality, a good tree, a good solid tree. And I think this metaphor is very good to represent the situation of Italy and Italians right now. Many people feel that their roots were cut because when they had to learn Italian in school, their dialects were sanctioned a lot.
Sure.
I mean, there was this presumption that to make room for Italian, you had to forget dialects, which is, totally...
well, we understand today that that's not the case.
We linguists especially know that you don't have to make room for a new language. There is potentially place in your brain for all the languages you want and you need. But many generations, for example, my father always tells me that he used to be beaten in school with a cane on his fingers when he said something in his own dialect. He's from Veneto.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that this caused a sort of linguistic trauma in entire generations. So that's the root system, the problem of the root system. And if you have those roots, you cannot really enjoy a real openness towards other languages. This is my opinion, of course, but it's not completely, I'm based on facts. And so it's not strange for me, or it's not unusual for me that people are so afraid to open up Italian to other languages. Now, in fact, the vocabulary of Italian has always been very much exposed to other languages for the place Italy has in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. So it has always been, in the middle of migrating routes, commercial routes. So we have, if you open the vocabulary, we have loans. or gifts, somebody says. Mario Linnei, a linguist, said they are gifts, actually, not loans, because the other languages don't want them back.
That's right.
But we have loans from like 50 different languages.
Absolutely.
It has never been a problem. Those who say, oh, we have to keep Italian pure, I think the best answer to them is to say, what would be pure Italian? Because if we consider pure Italian only those words that come in a straight line from Latin, we have to cut 3/4 of our vocabulary. We have to cut out all the Arabic words, all the ancient Greek words, all the, more recent loans from Provençal and whatever, ancient French, ancient German. And Italian has always been like that. So I think that those who want to preserve Italian from other languages, they just don't know the story of Italian. And this is something that should be taught much more in schools, for me.
What's your view on the alarmist English is taking over Italian? English is polluting the language. I'm always surprised that I continue to hear that. But then when I'm in Italy, sure, there's bits and pieces of English used here and there, but I don't feel like English is overtaking the language.
Not.
Yeah.
I think for some people it's easier to be afraid than to explore what's really happening between languages. Now, to this, I have to add one thing. I said before that many Italians, for example, of my generation, do not speak English that well. And that means that for many Italians, English remains sort of a magical language that can give more, a patina of luxury to any kind of discourse.
Right.
So, for example, in the field of the marketing, saying the same things you could say in Italian in English make them sound really posh. So it's not rare to listen to people saying things like la reason why di questo project richiede che la buyer persona abbia delle skills. And this is this mixed language, which we don't really need.
No, that's right.
So my advice to my students is always to, speak in Italian, think about, think if you can say this in Italian, if you have the word for this in Italian, it's not necessary to use English. If English adds a layer of meaning, then it's okay to use English. For example, in my field, I study a lot of digital stuff. And of course, English is everywhere.
Sure.
But it's part of a technical jargon, I would say. So it
slightly different.
Yes. I mean, if I say social network, I wouldn't say reti sociali, because rete sociale is also the one we have
with
in
people.
reality. Whereas in Italian, the definition social network is pertains to what happens in the digital.
Absolutely.
For example.
I was just in Italy, and in marketing language, I noticed there is this use of English that I mean, as a linguist myself, I find quite interesting. So there was a huge advertisement just near Santa Maria Novella in Florence for a bank. It was the Milanese bank, and it said blah, blah, blah in Italian. Then it said personal banker in English. Which I thought was really interesting because, and as you say, it is trying to add another message to rather than saying, whatever you might say in Italian, because that's eminently translatable in Italian.
Yeah, but banchiere personale, it's something so low level. Personal banker is completely different.
Exactly.
It's a glorified banchiere personale. But how can you contrast this?
Yes.
And so the traditionalists say we have to cut out English, we have to make laws that sanction the use of English.
Like in the early 20th century.
Yeah, like the good old bald guy.
That's right.
Exactly that one. Whereas De Mauro said, and I completely agree with him, that you can go over this idea that English makes everything sound better by learning more English. Because those who really know English usually tend to use it less when not needed.
Sure.
Yeah. So multilingualism is the antidote for the crisis of any language for me.
I like this. I'll use that as a quote.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm very much hated for this.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's much easier sometimes to take a purist sort of point of view than, to accept messiness.
Yeah.
Let's finish with your 3 recommendations for current sort of Italian songs that people should listen to.
Oh, well.
I'm putting you on the spot now.
That's difficult for me. I have one personal favorite. He's Da Supreme.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very young trapper, musician, and also producer.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of very nice songs by him. For example, one is called Bilico.
Okay.
If you can listen to that. And then my favorite, all-time favorite Italian group is Subsonica.
Mm-hmm.
They are from Turin. Mm-hmm. Every song is
good.
Yeah, Subsonica is 100% positive, everything. I love them so much. And then let's put also a female in the bunch so that we are trying to,
sure.
Actually, it's Da Supreme's sister, who has a really beautiful voice. She's called Mara Sattei.
Oh, okay.
She is Sara Mattei, but her stage name is Mara Sattei.
I like that.
And also every song by her is really nice to listen to.
Fabulous.
Whew. This was worse than an exam.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining Matt's Chitchats, part of the University of Melbourne School of Languages and Linguistics' Secret Life of Language podcast. A special thanks to our guest Vera Gheno. This episode was recorded and mixed at the Horde Recording Studio by Gavin Neighbour. Produced by me and Gavin Neighbour. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favourite podcast platform. This episode is licensed under Creative Commons 2025.